Today on Between the Lines, learn about living life as your true self when we meet Paul Kaye with his book, What's It Like Being You? I'm Barry Kibrick. Paul and his co-author John Roger believes that much of the difficulty we experience in life is the result of being who we are not.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old. And it was
you do not need to prove your state of happiness to anyone.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes of this book are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of corruption.
Get a chance to really talk about what's real. And this is very
My guest, Paul Kaye, is an ordained minister who believes that from the time we are born, we put a great deal of effort into trying to be who we think we are supposed to be rather than who we really are. His book, What's It Like Being You, is a guide to living life as your true self. Because if we don't, Paul believes we may be missing out on much of the joy that life has to offer. Paul, welcome to the show. This little book written by yourself and John Rogers starts off with a great little concept, and I want to pick your words first, if that's okay. And they were, life is performance art, and the ultimate performance is to play yourself. And at first I'm thinking, come on, that is what we do. And then you follow it up with a little line by E.E. Cummings, and it says, it takes courage to grow up and turn out to be who you really are. That's why you wrote this book.
That's absolutely correct. It's fascinated me, the way we can play so many roles and in a way not know the role that we're playing. For example, you and I right now are making a performance. You're the interviewer, I'm the author. But is that who we really are? When we put this down, when the show ends, who are we then? And that idea of what choice we make has always interested me. And with John Roger, I wrote this book to explore that whole subject.
Well, when you are exploring it, what is it about you? You are an author. When you're not on the show, you're still an author. You're an ordained minister. I'm a producer. I'm a host. I grant it that I have a different persona when I'm maybe not on television, although it's fairly close. But what is it that you feel we're not being ourselves about that we need to pay more attention to?
Well, you mentioned it in a way when you said a persona. It's what we perform in the world, the role that we put ourselves in. And I like to illustrate it by saying I have a medical doctor friend in Santa Monica, and he treats people for joint injuries. And he says the first thing that he tells his patients is that they are not their body, and that is the first step towards their healing. And he said it immediately makes a difference. And that to me is a very, very big key, because we look at ourselves in the mirror and we think that we are that, but we're not. We're not our bodies. And even more profound as we go through it is that we're not our minds and we're not our emotions, yet we're so terribly identified with those things in this world. So if we're not that, what are we?
Okay.
Who are we?
That's what we're going to start exploring then, because I'm curious about that as well. You say you can't help but be who you are. That's what breathes you. Your problems come when you pretend to be someone else. And as I said in the introductions, you believe that that's when we are missing out on the joy, is when we are not being ourselves. So tell us what we're doing and how we can become ourselves. What is it that we're pretending when we think we're ourselves, but we're not?
Well, first of all, none of this is negative. In a way, we all have to put on a suit of clothes, and that suit of clothes is never really going to be us. But what we try to do, as much as possible, is make it represent us as closely as we can. Another way of saying that is that we try to live our life in alignment with our values, with our purposes. And if we can do that, we can feel ourselves having a more alive life in a way, a more real life. How to get to this place of joy, in a sense, is the trick. And the only way I know that we can start to get there is to come present, to be here now, to be in the now, to live in this moment. something that all the mystery schools throughout the ages have talked about.
Well, and it's a running gag on my show practically, because I'm constantly saying, you know, I can never be in the now. I am always thinking about something else and doing something else. And in fact, I had Ram Dass, who's one of the great thinkers of, you know, Be Here Now. That was the name of the book. And I joked with him and I said, well, why not be there now? What's the big deal? Be somewhere else now. Explain that, because no matter how many times we hear it, I still think that's a hang-up that people have. When you say in the now, there's one element of it that makes me say, come on, we're always in the now. That's what we're doing. I am talking to you. You're listening to me. I'm going to listen to you in a second. We're in the now. Where do you see us as a species not living in the now? Where do you see us having this difficulty?
Virtually all anxiety that we have, and we have a lot as a species, is based on the future. If we have no future right now, if there is no future, there's no anxiety, there's no fear. All of our judgments and all of our resentments are based on the past, of what happened. And so we know we have a lot of those as well. So looking at what you're saying, I would say no, I don't think we do live in the now. Because when we do, something else takes place. It's just when we look at the past, which most of us do, and we look at the future, which most of us do, then we find ourselves, in a sense, out of balance, although it can be very exciting. And that's the seduction of it. I mean, looking towards the future is it with enthusiasm. Tomorrow's show, to the future possibilities. It's not a negative thing. But if we want to find that true moment of joy, it's now. And we can achieve it quite easily. And that's what's so marvelous, and that's what fascinates me, because it's so simple, yet so difficult.
Well, then what is the simpleness of it? What is it that you can advise our audience to let them be in touch with that sense of being in the present moment, in the now? Is it just an awareness? I mean, sometimes I find the awareness is not enough in itself. I sense oftentimes I know certain things, but I can't live them.
Well, that's the great mystery of the life. I call that the mystery of the known. Forget about the mysteries of the unknown. Why do we know what to do and not do it? That, to me, is the bigger mystery.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I could write a book just on that.
Absolutely. Well, you know, just coming back, and the viewers can do this now while I talk, is that we can start with our breathing, with our breath. Not in any kind of technique or yoga sense or any deep breathing sense, but we can actually just bring our attention to the rising and the falling of our breath. And when we stay with that, voila, we're in the now. We're present, and there we are.
Okay, let's put this on a practical sense for a second. I'm at work, and I'm busy preparing for the show. Is this something I should just stop and do? How does this, you say that this allows us to feel literally lighter. How and when do we start, doing this? And why is that so even important?
I think it's very, very important for a number of reasons. I don't know. You can let me know if this is your experience. But certainly mine is that I'm coming across more and more people that are very, very stressed out. That stress has become, in a sense, the problem of our age. Even as simple as the amount of traffic that we have to cope with on a day-to-day basis. Just the fact that we get very upset being in traffic. And so on a very, very practical level, we don't have to be upset being in our car. We can actually be relaxed. What's the problem being stuck in traffic? Yet people get extremely out of balance and stressful about it. And of course, they switch on this flight or flight syndrome, this stress response, and there they are sitting in their car. So essentially, we are poisoning our systems. So if we can be present with ourselves in the car, that can go a long, long way to living a more healthy life.
But you say, and I guess this now, I follow how this fits in now, because you say that need for control is one of the key problems that causes us to get out of what you call that living in the moment. A classic example would be traffic. We don't have control over the traffic. We get upset and we get out of that moment. Where you're saying is you don't have that control, accept that, and look at that traffic now differently. Would I be explaining that correctly?
I think that's terrific. My co-author, John Rogers, says that control is the master addiction. And I just find that fascinating. I'm still working with that idea, that control is the master addiction. Exactly. We cannot control the traffic. And that's why being in a car is such a wonderful metaphor, because in a way it really relates to life. There's many things in life that we can't control. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that we can't control our outer environment. But what we can do is bring dominion over our inner environment.
Paul, I want to follow up on something, because you did say just now that we can work on ourselves. That's the only thing we have control over. Yet there's a subtle difference between that and what I'm about to read, because you say we may tell ourselves we need to improve, which sounds well-intentioned, but it's really a subtle form of self-judgment. How do we work on ourselves to improve ourselves without being this form of self-judgment?
Well, it's, again, another fascinating area because of its subtlety. Essentially, we need to know something about ourselves, and that is that who we are is not this personality, is not this person chasing for material wealth to identify ourselves, is not this person chasing for life experiences so at the end of the day we can say, now I can relax. I have enough money, I have a big enough family, I have all these things, now I can let go and relax. We can let go and relax now. That's always available to us.
Okay. So now at least I'm getting to see my problem, because you're right. I'm always waiting for that next moment to occur, that next something that I'm expecting to happen. And it is hard to get satisfaction as you're waiting for that. As Tom Petty said, the waiting is the hardest part. You're wanting us to shift perspective. You say, don't wait, find it all right now.
That's the starting point right now. And in a sense, we're always at a starting point. It's too many of us want to always arrive and put pressure on ourselves to be at that place that we think will be a resting point for us. The way I look at it is the resting point is now. You and I can be at rest, at peace right now. In fact, that's really the only time we can do that. And so we, as we said, we can come back to our breath. Now, interesting thing about the breathing aspect that we talked about was that the root word of breath is actually spirit when you go back to how breath is. And if you take some of the Indian traditions like the word prana, that's the breath of life. In the Chinese tradition, qi is another word for breath. So it seems to be that breath really, embraces many, many cultures as a kind of a core focus in many ways. Now, when we come present, in a sense, we need to know that we're enough at that moment. And that when we suddenly say, okay, I need to improve, I need to be different, then we come into, that means that I'm not enough right now, or I'm not okay the way I am. So that's a key point, is to start with accepting ourselves the way we are. Then from in a sense, a springboard or a foundation of acceptance and unconditional love, then at that point we can say, you know what, I could use a different haircut, and you know what, I will take that course that will just help me in this area that I need to be helped. But it's not done from a sense of lack or inadequacy or judgment or self-flagellation or beratement. It's done from a foundation of acceptance and love.
I see. So I built the wrong foundation. I was working off that other one. But wait, let's talk about this, because you mentioned that unconditional love. And I talk with my wife, we often share thoughts, and one of them was that particular topic. Because on one level, I think unconditional love works great for children. You really and you even in the book, you say that's the role of a parent, is that unconditional love. I got a sense when you just said it, you also meant for ourselves a sort of unconditional love. Not necessarily for others. You're allowed to be judgmental if you wish to on someone's behavior, but you're looking at this from oneself. You need to be lighter on yourself in order to springboard off into the improvement rather than start this improvement based on a self-dislike. Am I getting it?
Exactly. You know, that's it. I mean, our motivation is our intention is in a way is everything. I mean, how we go about things really distinguishes us from as human beings, whether we're moving in more of a spiritual consciousness or more of a material consciousness.
But you even use these words. I'm gonna get them exactly. Even when we want to break an attachment to self-defeating behavior, we don't. We merely often exchange one false self pattern for another. This is again where I can be aware of what it is you're saying, but as you've made the observation, that awareness itself isn't enough to change this pattern. And I can't believe that even if I took a deep breath once in a while, that would do it. What else is it that we need to be exploring? And this is funny. We need to explore this while we're content being where we're at.
We explore right now, wherever we are, but we don't explore it from a sense that we're wrong, that we're bad, because that comes from the ego and the personality. From a true self point of view, or the soul point of view, everything is fine right now. In fact, everything we can do right now can be done joyfully. But it can only be done joyfully now. And so we can go about these so-called self-improvements with a joyful attitude, but not out of, I'm no good, so therefore I need to do this. No, you're good, and maybe you want to choose to do this.
Okay, all right. Now, why is it that you say, and that I have experienced over and over, it is easier to see this quality in others and so hard to see our true selves in ourselves?
Well, the answer to that really is that when you see it in someone else, it's because they're reflecting it to you. You can only see it because it's in you. So that's really the key thing. So when you see love, I mean, this is to me the plus of falling in love. This great emotional roller coaster that many of us have been in at some time in our lives. It's just like when we see someone and we fall in love with them, in a sense, at that moment, they're reflecting the love that we have inside of us. And, of course, we put it on them. Then they change their behavior. Then we say, forget it, I don't love you anymore, which is another reflection to us of our own level of control. So really, what we perceive and what we're dealing with in the world is all just reflecting to us where we are inside. So it's a wonderful measure in a way. So if you go out of here and then you're saying, you know what, I'm just seeing a lot of love and goodness and beauty around me. Aha, something's stirring inside of you.
But why is that so fleeting? And I know that's, you know, as I say, so fleeting because this happens to me. I'm blessed. I get to do this show. So I get to read these types of books over and over. And as I finish one, I have this awareness. I really do. I walk away. I'm feeling that lightness. I'm feeling it. Give me a couple of hours. That's all it takes. So give me a day or two. If it's, you know, why is it so fleeting? I have trouble grasping that concept because, and I even have more trouble because here I am, the guy reading this over and over and over. And I admit, the more I do, and the more I explore, and the more I get involved with these concepts, there is no doubt my self is changing. But I still find it so fleeting, and therefore I could only assume that my viewers who are once in a while dabbling into one of these books or watching this, they must be feeling that same fleeting moment. So I want the answer. I really do, Paul. And I know if I had this answer, I wouldn't even have to do the show anymore. But I want to know how to make this thing more stable.
Okay. You've got it turned around the wrong way.
Okay.
Okay.
Flip me right.
Okay. It's not fleeting. It is constant and always present. What's fleeting is your attention. And your attention primarily has been your conditioning.
See, so you do want to blame me. No. Okay.
Or our conditioning.
Okay. All right.
Our conditioning.
All right, I'm going to try to trick you. No, go ahead.
And so, if you start to practice the way you practice the other thing, the conditioning of the world of wanting to be a success, wanting other people's approval. It just goes on and on and on. If you can practice the attention of being present, of unconditional love, enough times, eventually it will start to be a more common experience and be less fleeting. So, in a sense, again backwards, who we are is the constant. What the world is this constant fleetingness. And that's why there's the great value in knowing ourselves.
Well, you really did a good job with that one, Paul. I thought I might have had you. Let me go over these things because I got a sense, because you called them 4 spiritual laws, that somehow our awareness of these, again, deeply will help us get to that source or that sense that you're describing. You say they are acceptance, cooperation, understanding, and enthusiasm. And you very clearly separate. Acceptance doesn't mean we like, agree, or condone what is going on. So this isn't one of those relativistic kinds of things. This is not very ephemeral, we've got to accept everything. You're really careful about this. You're saying it on a different level. Explain that so we can feel what that level of acceptance is.
Acceptance has been called the first law of spirit. And when John Roger brought this to my attention many, many years ago, it really rang a bell. And since then, I've found that each year, virtually, I find a deeper level of acceptance that I can go to. So these things are quite profound and, in a sense, unfold within us. And so acceptance isn't to be taken lightly as like, okay, I'll just accept that. But when we can move into acceptance, complete, unconditional acceptance, then we move into a different state of awareness. Now, the big difficulty I have when I talk about this in talks is that people immediately think it's passive. It's very hard to get past people's conditioning with acceptance being, okay, well, that means I just lie down and just accept, and, it's like, no. First of all, we're dealing with an inner quality. We start with acceptance, again, as an inner foundation. Then again, what we choose to do in the world is out of a choice, but it doesn't have to be out of judgment or negativity. It can be like, this is the way it is, because this is the way it is right now.
It's because of the conditioning. I guess it is still a little harder to grasp, but I'll have to accept that for now. Let me go through the others, because some of them I understood very clearly. In fact, one of them being understanding and enthusiasm. Those rang very true to me without an issue. Cooperation, where does that come to? Is that just, what were you getting at with cooperation? That was the one that I had a little bit more difficulty grasping.
Well, again, when we come to this what isness, that word you mentioned, what is, what's present right now. If we can fully cooperate with what's going on, as you do when, in a sense, things go wrong.
See, that's where I got it wrong. I was thinking of cooperation it was with the thing itself. It's with what's going on itself.
Yes, with what's going on.
Okay.
If we can fully cooperate with what's going on, then it looks like we're in control. It actually looks like we're in control. When we're not, all we're doing is just completely cooperating with it. So it's really coming into harmony and balance with what's around us. And once we do that, then as our awareness is present, then things start to change of themselves in a way.
Well, let me ask you something then. When this is just occurred to me as we're talking. Usually I'm only going off of my things that I'm prepared to go off of, but you just hit on something. When I'll assume that, even if I assume the worst of myself, I'll assume that I have sometimes my moments when I'm in the now, and when I'm accepting, when I'm cooperating, when I'm fully enthused, when I'm doing all those right things, and I do sense it. And I sense I'm a little different when that's occurring. Do you sense yourself, after so many years of dedicating yourself to this, when you find yourself getting out of sorts, are you able to snap back? Do you have a lag period? Is it, what goes on with you when you find, I'm making a big assumption, but I'll assume you're human. You're getting out of sorts, probably only as often as I'm getting into it, but nonetheless, what are you snapping yourself back with?
Well, it goes down to the idea that when we learned to walk as a kid, or any child you observe learning to walk, they fall down a lot. What gets them to walk is they get up one more time than they fall down. And essentially, that's what we're dealing with as human beings. No matter how far off track we go, we just get up one more time. We come back inside, if you will. We come back to acceptance. We come back to unconditional loving one more time than we go out of it. And we're there. So we don't have to worry about all the big pictures and the whole universe and everything. All we have to do is just like, are we there right now? And if we're not, let's get there. And one way to get there, if we're in judgment or out of balance, is forgiveness. There's a very easy way to do it.
Now, it's funny you should say forgiveness, because the next thing I was going to bring up was the one way that I am able to catch myself. And it's what you called swimming in the sea of gratitude. Very close to forgiveness, but you don't even need to forgive if you're just grateful for so many of the things that exist. I found that was the one bridge I had to cross. I found myself finding that hard to be grateful while I was, quote unquote, struggling or striving, however you want to look at it. All of them, like you would say, not being in the moment. But at least I found for myself, when I was able to, regroup and realize that grace and to be grateful, and that's what you bring right towards the end of the book as well. There's something about swimming in that sea of gratitude.
Absolutely. And you just hit upon one of the great keys to life. If we can just be grateful for what we have right now, even though we can see we could have much more, but just to be grateful for what's present in our lives, we just move into a more expansive, loving state. And we come into more of who we are.
On that note, Paul, I'm going to end with your words. The grateful feeling has a wonderful protective quality to it, and gratitude is a higher state of consciousness. I'm very grateful you graced our stage today, Paul.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. Now, before Paul leaves, I would like to leave you with these words from What's It Like Being You? What is between the thoughts? We discover that in the gaps between thoughts is the energy the thoughts ride on. This means that what is holding the thoughts is stronger than the thoughts themselves. The revelation is astounding. I'm Barry Kibrick. Look very closely between those thoughts and read very carefully between those lines, for that is where strength lies, and the revelation is astounding. Thank you, Paul.
If you'd like a tape of our show or would like to become a member of our book club and receive our weekly email show updates, just write us at barrykibrick@aol.com.